slips away, days burn, disintegrate, years roll along and fade. Don't let them slip away. Right here, right now, today. These are the good old days. Right here, right now, today. Hey, these are the good old days.
In 1982, when Mattel released the Masters of the Universe figures, and they flooded the toy aisles for years to come, a legend was born. It's not often where a company looking to just create a toy line creates an icon like He-Man, but they did. And it seems like every household in the world knew who He-Man was and had some kicking around. Ironically, the most iconic version of He-Man, the He-Man we saw on TV every day, which was the original release He-Man with the battle harness, quickly became one of the hardest figures to find. There was the original run, and then they moved on to other figures. Now we got other versions of He-Man. We've got the Battle Armor He-Man, which to some is as beloved as the original release He-Man. We got Thunder Punch He-Man, we got Flying Fists He-Man, we got Laser Light He-Man, kind of. There was a plethora of He-Mans to be had, but what quickly became a grail for many of us was that original release Battle Harness He-Man, which to today still is the most iconic He-Man. Finding a He-Man today with his harness still intact is easier said than done. In one of our first videos here on GoFigure, we looked at how to recreate the He-Man harness using some materials and a Cricut cutter. But today we're going to try and upgrade that a little bit using some 3D printing technology. It's not as simple as print it and go, so I want to show you the steps I did when I made my new and improved harness. And then we have a little surprise for you as well. So let's get going.
You're taking a very big chance.
Alright, so here we have an actual battle harness He-Man, a complete one, and here we have the harness that we made last time. And yeah, it looks good, it holds up, and it does the job. However, it is a little bit flat, it's not super dynamic, and one of the things that really bothered me was holding on with wires at the back. So we are going to try and fix that or upgrade it today. So the first step is to print off the harness. So to do that, you got to design it. So I have the outline here of a harness, and I just drag that picture into the flash print software that I use. And then I'm going to cut that down and get a working 3D model here of the basic shape. And so we're just going to slice it and then remove the bottom part there. And then what you're left with is kind of a crude harness. And then what you can do is you can center that into the middle of it, into the middle of the space. And then we're going to just add on different pieces that we make here. Bit of a lengthy process, but after about an hour of designing, I have a harness here that we can just print off, and once we print it off, we can get it onto our He-Man. Alright, so we have our harness printed here, and you can see it looks really good, but it's very rigid. The PLA that you use to print stuff on can get real hard. It's pretty firm, and it'll break or snap if you bend it too hard. So what we do, the solution to that, is we have to warm it up and shape it. So I needed a donor torso here. I just got into my parts bin and found a Hordak torso. So I'm going to pour some really hot water onto that torso, into this little basin. Just to get it warm, because again we want to use it to help shape what's going on. So once that torso is warm, I like to have the torso warm just to help shape it when it's out of the water. Then we take that torso out of there, and we're going to place the harness in, and place it in for just a few seconds. And don't burn yourself because it is warm water, but once it's in there for a few seconds, it kind of becomes malleable. And then we're going to take it and we're going to slap it around our warm torso. That will also help keep shaping it when it's out of the water. And you just kind of form it around the shape that you need. And the clasps in the back to make sure that they can reach and put together. And once you kind of have it like that, there's enough natural flex in it that you should be able to just warm the back a little bit more and make sure that they all kind of fit together. Once you have those clips together, there we go. Once you have those clips together, you can just give it a second, let it dry and cool down, Doesn't take long, and then the harness will be shaped exactly to how you want it shaped. And then you just pop it off of the warmed up wet torso and let it dry for a minute, and you'll be able to put it on to He-Man. Now, if we did our job right, this harness here should just go right onto He-Man, and the clips at the back should be ready to just, there we go, snap into place, and just like an actual harness, hold it on there. Yeah, and look at that. First try, and that harness is on there good. Now, we need to paint the raised up accents red, so I'm just going to use some acrylic paint for that. And the paint I'm going to use is just from the dollar store acrylic paint, but the color I'm going to use is deep red as opposed to what, like the cherry or fire engine red. I find this one matches the original vintage toy really well. And normally where I would put like 4 or 5 coats on it to really make a red stand out, I'm only going to put 1 or 2 coats on this because I find when I find a vintage harness, the paint is kind of a little bit transparent and worn out. So we kind of want to match that aesthetic as best we can. So it's going to pop, it'll dry a little darker than you see right now. But I'm just going to put 1 or 2 nice coats on there, but I'm not going to worry about too much about getting that red to really, really pop, because it's going to kind of have to match what you'd find on the shelf. Alright, and there is our He-Man with his new harness, and I think he looks great. And now it's time for a new segment of the show called The Easiest Customs Ever. Now, the cool thing about making a vintage Motu custom is the whole line was based on reusing armor and parts and swapping and adding things together, and sometimes even full figures used just different paint schemes. So you can mix and match stuff pretty easily. Now, when we found we were using our spare torso, in my parts bin, I found this Horde armor on him as well. And I thought, what could I do with a spare set of Horde armor? I had then remembered in Revelations when there was a blink and you'll miss it scene where Skeletor was a member of the Horde. Now, whether you like Revelation or not is not the debate, but the idea of Skeletor being a member of the Horde and working with Hordak has been in the lore for a long time. And I thought, what would it look like if the vintage line made a Horde version of Skeletor? So I looked back in my parts bin. And what I found in there was a complete Jitsu body without a head. Now the interesting thing about Jitsu was it's exactly the same recipe as Skeletor's body. Same legs, same pelvis, same arms, everything. I also found this janky battle armor Skeletor with no arms and a not working chest. So I thought, what if I took his head and just pulled it off, and then put it onto this Ninjor body, and painted his head black, threw the armor on there, and then gave him a Hordak cape. That might look pretty great. So I threw the armor on the Jitsu body, and right away that looks pretty stunning. And I'm just going to screw this head or squish this head into place. It'll go there just to give it a second. And once that's in place, I'm going to paint the hood black. So it will match the aesthetic and kind of give him that Horde look. Yeah, that's going to look great. So let's paint this hood black with some acrylic paint. I took the armor off just to make it a little easier to paint this now. But again, just using some dollar store acrylic paint with a fairly big brush just to get the hood done, and then a little bit of a smaller brush to get the detailing around the face and the inside there. Once I get that all painted black, he's already starting to look kind of awesome, like a young version of Skeletor. So once we have this all painted in and covered black, we're going to throw the armor back on him. Now what I'm going to do for a cape is, again, just like I did for the movie He-Man, I'm going to take some of the outside of a binder here, run it through the Cricut machine, and cut out a Hordak cape. And the pattern for that you can find on my Facebook page as well. And once that's cut out, we have our Hordak cape here now. I'm going to throw it into the back of this armor, and then throw the armor onto Skeletor. And I think Now, it's not the way he looked in Revelation. I wasn't trying to make a Revelation version of it, but just what would a vintage Horde young version of Skeletor look like? And I think this is going to look pretty awesome. And I think he's going to look great on my shelf next to Hordak. Yeah, so I put the armor back on him here. And yeah, that looks pretty great. I'm excited about this. Look at that. Horde, Skeletor, and a redone He-Man. And just for kicks, I printed He-Man a new sword, and they are ready for the shelf.
So there you go. There's our new and improved 3D printed harness for He-Man and how to get it onto him without wrecking it. And a quick little simple custom that you can do to make yourself a Horde version of Skeletor. Well, if you're having as much fun as we are, if you enjoy what we did today, click the like, the bell, subscribe, all the things that YouTube tells you to do. And hopefully, we'll see you on the next video.